It's time to answer a question that's vexed high school students for decades. Why do we write papers and do algebra? Welcome to Sharpening Arrows, where we train teens to think biblically about life and politics. I'm your host, Victor Jakes. I want to take a moment and welcome those of you who are new to the show and just give you a little bit of an overview of this show's format. It's a little bit different. We do talk about current issues. Today, we're going to be talking about AI. And the format of this show is that I present the best arguments for the side that I personally disagree with. And then we go through and dissect them. And the reason we do this is that it's important to realize that there are good arguments for bad ideas. And we actually do our children a disservice by not presenting and talking about those ideas. Because if they think there are no good arguments for things that I disagree with, and they encounter a good argument, not a correct argument, a good argument, an appealing argument, they can be unprepared to handle it. And so that's what we want to do, is we want to dig into these issues and find out, why do people believe things that are wrong or things that I disagree with. And as part of that, we include what I call pause point questions. Those are questions where I encourage you to stop the podcast. And in this podcast, I encourage you to listen with your teen or preteen, listen together, put in the AirPods, put it on the speaker, do it in the car. And then when we get to those pause point questions, pause the podcast and talk about it, because you are your child's most important teacher. And so please use this podcast as a tool to help you have those discussions. And I like to say that we train teens to debate like Charlie Kirk and ask questions like Ali Stuckey. And I saw this exchange on Twitter a couple days ago. Ali Stuckey was talking about the advice Charlie had given her before her appearance on a podcast called Outnumbered. And Charlie told her the best two questions to always ask are, one, what do you mean by that exactly? And two, what biblical evidence do you have to support that claim? And if you've been with us for a while, that first question should jump out at you. What do you mean by that exactly? Because that's one of the great 8 questions. That's one of the great 8 questions, one of those tools that we're putting in our mental toolbox to ask when we encounter an issue we aren't familiar with. What do you mean by that? As a reminder, we are on YouTube, youtube.com/@sharpening-arrows, youtube.com/@sharpening-arrows. The big highlight of watching on YouTube is that sometimes my children come in and like the photobomb. That's it. That's the highlight. All right, let's get into our discussion on AI in education. As we do that, the first thing we need to do, and as a reminder, this is a continuation of our last episode. Let's ask question 5. What do you mean by that? Because AI is a term that we've certainly all heard, certainly all have an idea, but when we are talking about it in this context, what do we mean by the term AI? And this definition is from Harvard Summer School, and I'm going to be talking today about generative AI. And that's AI that creates new content. And it does this by analyzing large amounts of data. ChatGPT-3 was trained on 45 terabytes of data, equivalent to about a quarter of the Library of Congress. And based on that data, the computer generates new content based on the patterns it sees in the original data. All right, last episode, we looked at some important but almost some surface level arguments about AI. The first is that it personalizes learning and that it's everywhere, so students might as well use it. I'm not going to do a recap here of that discussion, but please go back and listen to the last episode if you want to hear the full thing. All right, so we're moving into kind of the third point that we talked about. But before we do that, I'd like to share some research from Pew Research Center. In 2023, it found that 13% of U.S. teens, 13 to 17, said they had used ChatGPT to help with their homework. Let's have our first pause point. 13% in 2023. What percent do you think used ChatGPT to help with their homework in 2024? All right, it was actually 26%. I don't have the data for 2025, but I'm going to guess it's even higher. So here's another pause point. Is it cheating to use AI to complete your schoolwork? What do you think? This leads us right into the question that I left us at last time, a bit of a cliffhanger, which is this argument. And remember, we're going to start with the arguments that I personally disagree with, and we're going to make the best case for them that we can so we can understand their appeal, and then we're going to unpack them. And the argument is this. High school students, you don't need to learn something if ChatGPT can do it for you. And ChatGPT can do a lot for you. Your teacher wants a paper on Macbeth? All right, type in a prompt, tell it how long, and boom, in seconds, it's done. You have math homework, math worksheets. Maybe if your school is excellent, you have an actual math book. Okay, take a picture of the page, upload it to ChatGPT, and boom, seconds later, it will spit out answers for you. This is called efficiency, and efficiency is good. We all want efficiencies in life. Think about something mundane, something not enjoyable, like cleaning a bathroom. When I tell my kids to clean the bathroom, my standard is that the bathroom is clean, not that they spend a certain amount of time cleaning it. When I tell them to do the dishes, I don't say you're sentenced to 45 minutes with the dishes. I say go clean the dishes. And hey, here's some ways to be more efficient with the dishes, and then you can get done faster, because I don't want you to spend all day doing the dishes. I just want the dishes done. That's all ChatGPT is doing, right? Schools should teach students how to accomplish their task more efficiently. Doing homework shouldn't feel like a prison sentence. It's not about time served. It's about mission accomplished. And this is why students should be able to use ChatGPT as much as they want. All right, let's have a pause point. What do you think about that argument? Do you agree or disagree? And why? As you're doing that, let me tell you about Mama Bear Prayers, a podcast for moms who are knee-deep in dishes and training their teens. Whether you are in the carpool lane or the coffee line, host Charity Rios wants to come alongside you and help you grow deeper in your relationship with Jesus. Now, as every parent knows, raising kids can feel like a ping pong game. You bounce from moments of joy to moments of deepest concern. Combine this with the busyness of life, and this back and forth can leave you feeling overwhelmed and even isolated. As the mom of 4 very, very busy boys, Charity knows this firsthand, and it's why she created Mama Bear Prayers, to support you, the mom who is on the journey of raising kids. Now, I may not be the target audience for a Mama Bear Prayers podcast, but I have certainly been encouraged by Charity's insight and prayers. God works through prayer, so check out Mama Bear Prayers today. All right, let's have another pause point. What is the purpose of education? That's a really important question, because when we're talking about if ChatGPT, if generative AI can replace learning, high school activities, this is what we're really trying to figure out, is can we accomplish the purpose of education by typing in a prompt, or is there something more at work? All right, I'm sorry to stack the pause point questions here, but here's another question we just have to ask. Which of the great 8 questions would you use here as we think about this idea of the purpose of education, which we're going to get to? I know I'm leaving you hanging there a little bit. But as we look into this idea of can ChatGPT replace traditional homework assignments, which of the grade 8 questions would you use to approach this? Question 1, what happens next? Question 2, has this been tried before? Question 3, is there a principle involved? Question 4, what are the trade-offs? Question 5, what do you mean by that? Question 6, is this an appeal to emotion or logic? Question 7, am I focused on the speaker or the argument? And question 8, what does the Bible say? Take a moment, really think about this and think about how would you attack this argument. Now, the question I would use, and remember, if you used a different question, that doesn't mean you're wrong. There's different ways to approach this. And there's several questions on here that really jump to mind. But the question I'm going to start with is question 3. Is there a principle involved? Is there a principle involved? And this is what I think the argument fundamentally gets wrong. It confuses ends and means. When a student has to write a paper on Macbeth, he or she views the paper as the goal. When I was a student and I got assigned a paper, you know what my goal was? Get done with the paper, get a good grade on the paper, but I wanted to get the paper done. See, I thought the paper was the end. I thought the paper was the whole goal. But now that I'm a parent, now that I'm helping teach my own children, I much better understand that those papers, those homework assignments are actually the means to a far more important end. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about 3 things that AI can't replace, and kind of as a response to this, and then to make the argument that it is important for students to do homework without the assistance, without just turning their brains over to ChatGPT. Number 1, it's important for students to write papers. Again, as a student, it's very natural to view completing the paper as the goal. And if you can do that with ChatGPT, all right, I found an efficiency. But you're missing something. You're missing something vital. The key product of a school paper isn't the paper itself. It's a mind sharpened by the task of writing. Writing forces you to research a topic. It forces you to organize your thoughts. It forces you to present and defend a thesis. It makes you do all this in a way that can be understood by other people. Then your writing is improved by review and revision. I just want you to take a step back. As you go through life, these are the things. These are the mental abilities that are going to help you be successful. Before you open a business, I hope you will do some research into that industry. Before you make a presentation, I hope you organize your thoughts. Before you try and convince someone, you're going to have to come up with what it is you want them to convince them of, the thesis. And when you talk to other people, whether in your personal life, whether to your kids, whether in a business relationship, whether in a church service, you're going to want to do it in a way that can be understood. And newsflash, you're not going to get all of these things right the first time. In fact, you're going to do it and you'll be like, oh, that was bad. I made mistakes. You're going to need to go back and review and revise and improve. Your English teacher, student, whether it's a teacher in a school or it's your parent in homeschool, your English teacher is not hoping for some groundbreaking insight when she reads her 500th paper on Hamlet. That's not what she wants. That's not what she's waiting for. The grade and feedback she gives on papers show students what they need to work on in this process. And if you just go to ChatGPT and you just type in a prompt, you have outsourced your thinking. That incredible gift that God has given you of your mind, you have outsourced it to someone else. And shame on you, because you are cheating yourself and you are cheating the plan that God has for you. So write your paper, work hard on your paper, and know that the paper is important, but it's an important tool to a much greater end. All right, okay. Victor, you're a writer. You get paid to write. Okay, it's fine. You've convinced me about the paper. What about math? All right, let's have a pause point there. What are the practical benefits to learning math that you won't use again? That is a question that a lot of adults struggle to answer. A lot of math teachers struggle to answer. And I think it really turns a lot of students off to math because they think, I'm doing algebra 2, and my my mom and dad, they've been successful. Like, we have a house and a car, and they can't remember what I'm doing with these variables. Sine and cosine, what are these? Okay, well, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I actually majored in math. I was much better in math than I was at writing through my whole college career. And I also am going through the math as my kids get into high school. And it's like, wow, yeah, I have not used this specific stuff. When I went to college and majored in math, we got rid of the numbers, and it was all these letters and theorems. And I can't tell you those theorems. But I'm telling you that being a math major was one of the great things that allowed me, that the Lord put in my path, that He allowed me to do, that helped me as a writer, that helped me as a communicator. Why? Number one, here's the most important thing about math. It forces you to think logically. Okay, I've got this problem. Question 1, what happens next? Literally, what do I do next with this problem? Think about question 3. Is there a principle involved? You're doing that all of the time in math, again and again and again and again. Second thing that math does, it forces you to pay attention to details. My beautiful oldest daughter, who is working on math, executive producer of this podcast, she'll have to forgive me for embarrassing her. Sometimes she will go through a problem and she will do, they'll have like 18 little steps, and she'll get one of the steps wrong. And guess what? That means your answer is wrong. Okay, when you make a recipe, when you build a house, when you repair a car, when you create an assignment for work, when you do a lesson plan for your child's homeschooling, guess what? There's lots of little details in all of those things, and the end result doesn't work if you don't get the details right. And what is math forcing you to do? It's forcing you to pay attention to detail after detail after detail after detail. Here's the truth, teenager. Unless you're going into a highly technical field, much of what you will be doing in life is not that difficult as one individual task. What's difficult is knowing what to do, when to do it, and then actually doing it correctly again and again and again and again. And you know what's great preparation for that? Math. Third thing that math is great at, English is important for this too, it gives you an opportunity to review your work. You can ask your parents this, but just because you are old, like I am, doesn't mean that when you do something the first time it's right. Things get better. My writing gets so much better because I go back and I review it, and I review it, and I review it, and I review it. And where did I get that habit? Well, one place was math, because I got a lot better grades because I went back and I reviewed and I reviewed and I reviewed. So here is why math is so important for you, even if you despise math, even if you aren't sure that you'll ever do another algebraic equation. It forces you to think logically. It forces you to pay attention to details, and it gives you a clear opportunity to review your work. Maybe that's not convincing. Let me encourage you to think about it this way. Have you ever thought about why a football player does a bench press? Now, a bench press, if you're not familiar with weightlifting, you lie down on a bench and you take weights, you bring it down to your chest, and you lift it up. Now, in no way does this resemble something that's going to happen on a football field. First of all, There are no benches on the field of play. You might sit on a bench when you're on the sidelines. You're not going to stop and say, hey, look at how much I can bench press. Football involves running and tackling, not lying down in one spot. And further, there are machines that can lift far more weight than any individual football player could ever hope to. So let's have a pause point. Why do football players lift weights? The answer to that is so obvious, I almost didn't ask the question. It's because lifting weights builds the muscles that allow football players to perform better. And so even though a football player on the football field is not doing a bench press, is not doing a squat, is not doing a deadlift, those things are building their physical muscles that help them run faster and tackle better. Your brain is a muscle too, and you need to exercise it. And you exercise it by writing, you exercise it by doing math, you exercise by learning about history, by studying the Bible, by studying science. And schools and us parents, we need to demand that our students exercise their mental muscles through papers, tests, and homework, not outsourcing their thinking to ChatGPT. All right, and here's the third reason, and I think this is actually the most important. Education isn't just about learning, reading, and math. And AI is not a substitute for moral judgment. This is lost in a lot of modern education, this idea that education needs to be about moral instruction as well as practical instruction. But it's not a new idea. This is from classicalliberalarts.com. For Aristotle, the purpose of education was to form the rational soul in accordance with its highest powers, to cultivate both moral virtue and intellectual wisdom. Education was not ordered toward employment, but toward virtue, what the Greeks called arete. And if you speak Latin, you can tell me how terribly or Greek, you can tell me how terribly I butchered that. Education was aimed at training citizens and leaders who could rule themselves before attempting to rule others. Think of AI like this, and I did not get this. I don't know who said it, but it was brilliant. AI is like C-3PO from Star Wars, full of knowledge, but lacking wisdom. Students need to learn what's right from wrong. The best source of that, of course, is the Bible. Question 8, what does the Bible say? The Bible is the cheat code. God created the universe. He knows how it runs best. Now, people who are not believers, obviously you can't just say it's in the Bible, therefore go do it. But you can find evidence of the Bible's wisdom throughout the other disciplines. We need moral instruction. Students need moral instruction to learn what to do with their knowledge. It's not enough simply to know. You have to know what to do. What is right? What is the right thing to do with that you have been taught? Think of it this way. Imagine a cowboy, big, strong cowboy, bringing his 5-year-old son to the corral and telling him, here's the mightiest stallion. Just get on and ride. He'll take it from here. That's what many teens want to do with ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT is the mighty stallion. ChatGPT will tell me what to do. But we understand how crazy it is for a cowboy to tell his son that. The son doesn't know how to ride, so the horse would just buck him off. But even after the cowboy taught his son to ride, he must provide direction on where to ride. That's the moral instruction that teenagers so desperately need. It is precisely because AI is so powerful that human intelligence, including the moral instruction found in God's word, is needed now more than ever. All right, just a couple of programming notes. I am traveling this week, but I am going to have a special Christmas episode out. I'm so excited about that, and a special episode on making New Year's resolutions. So just a couple of things to look forward to. It may only be one a week here for the next couple of weeks. If you enjoyed this podcast, give me a Christmas gift and text it to a friend. Share it on social media. Help other parents and teens benefit from these conversations. Be courageous like Charlie. Stay sharp and give God the glory. Merry Christmas, and I'll see you next time.